Assalamualaikum everybody. So today I am going to do a video on placing the measurements that we took on a previous video onto fabric. Um, Everyone has been asking me how to do this, how to do basic A-lines, etc. So we're going to start off by putting the measurements on the fabric, and then we'll take it from there. Assalamualaikum everybody. So before placing the measurements on the fabric, you have to do a little bit of math. So for the bust, the waist, and the hips, which isn't listed because we don't need the hip measurements for an A-line or semi-swing, you would divide those numbers by 4 because our bodies are made up of 4 parts basically. So you have the front, one side, front another side, and the back one side and another side, so those measurements you would divide by 4. Now the measurements like the armhole, the top of the arm, the wrist, the shoulders, you would do it by 2 because there are, the arm, there are 2 arms, and then the wrist, you have 2 wrists, 2 top of the arms, etc. So if I divide 43 by 4, that would be 10.75. If I divide the waist by 4, that would be 9.25. The armhole, I already divided by 2, but the main number was 18, and I divided 18 by 2, which I got 9. Sorry. The top of the arm, the bicep, you divide that by 2, and that is 6.5. The wrist is 4. 8 divided by 2 is 4. The arm, that is the length of the arm. So you do not need to divide that by anything. You keep that, leave it alone. The shoulders, you divide by 2. And 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. So the numbers that you divided the main number by 2 or 4, those are the numbers that you will place on the fabric, because the fabric is folded in 4s. You fold it long way, hot dog style, and then you fold it again, hamburger style. So it is folded in 4s, which is why majority of the measurements are divided by 4. So before placing the measurements on the fabric, you will need utensils. So of course you will need your book with your measurements. You will need a ruler. It can be metal, it can be wooden, but you need that to draw the lines across. Or you can use your tape measure, but I find that using the metal ruler gets straighter lines. I use the tape measure to get the length of the garment, or long lengths, because usually these only go up to 24 inches, or you could use a yardstick, but even using a yardstick, it's not equivalent to the length of a garment. You also will need scissors, and when you use scissors, you don't want to use scissors that you cut paper with. Whatever fabric scissors you have, keep them for fabric, and that's it. You will need a couple pair of scissors for a certain type of fabric, but that will be in another video. You will need something to write on the fabric with, to mark the put the lines in the measurements. So sometimes I'll use a color pencil. Other times I will use chalk, right? Teller's chalk. You could use regular chalk. You could use dried soap. that will leave a mark, but it all depends on the color of the fabric, because you know, if you have white fabric, you will need a colored chalk, because a white chalk will not show up on white fabric. So here we go. So when I first start placing the measurements, I put a straight line across the fabric. It doesn't have to go all the way across, but I put a straight line because when you put the shoulder, the neck hole, and all of those things, you will need seam allowance. Because we're using stretch fabric, any stretch or knit, etc., depending how stretchy it is, you will need to put a half an inch for seam allowance. You don't really need to put ease allowance, because when we took the measurements, we made sure that the measurements wasn't tight. So you only need a half an inch for the seam allowance. So I put the measurements across, and this is where I will be putting, where I will be starting. And then also, this is the line that I use to mark my length line. So the first thing I do is, okay, so I put the measuring tape here, and I'm sorry, it's kind of hard holding the measuring tape, so I'm going to use anything. Holding the measuring tape and holding the foam. So I want to make sure that the measuring tape is still there where I need it to be. So you go from the top. The length of the garment, the length is 57. So usually with knits, some fabrics you want to add 2 inches at the bottom. Not for seam allowance, but just for when you turn under, when you turn under the fabric to hem it, sometimes you need 2 inches. But because it's a knit garment, you don't want to put that much allowance, because the garment will still be long. So I usually do an inch, excuse me, an inch. So I'll do 58. So I'm working at 58. I usually do this 2 times, but if you are not used to doing this, marking the measurements with the measuring tape, this is not really holding it. If you're not used to using the measuring tape and using the ruler to measure, then I suggest you put a mark more than one time. So I have a mark right here and a mark right there. And I take the ruler and go straight across. So this is the hemline, the end of the garment. So remember, I added an inch to the hem, to the length, to get the hemline. Okay, so the next measurement I do is the shoulders. I kind of go in order. So the shoulders, it's 7.5, not 15. You put 7.5. So I do 7.5. And then for the neck, there is a standard measurement that I like to use for knits. For knits, I usually go over 4 inches, and then I go down I go down 3 inches. And that ensures the neck hole will be, you know, wide enough. But that's for the front. The 3 is for the front. 1 inch is for the back hole, for the back neck hole. I'm trying to hold the camera at the same time. And so basically I just took it from the 4 inches and brung it around in a circle, freehanded a curve. And for the neck, for the back neck, I did the same thing. When you're cutting out fabric, because everything is on a fold, you want to make sure you cut out the back neck first, because if not, both the front and the back will have a low neckline and you won't really be able to do anything with it. You'll have to start over. Okay, so for the shoulder, our shoulders, we're not, as humans, we're not just straight across, up and down. We have curves, we have all of that. So for our shoulders slope down. And usually I go down an inch to accommodate the slope. So I went down an inch from the top line. Then I'll go from the 4-inch mark to the dot that I just put there. And that makes the slope. Now the next measurement is the armhole. So you go from that 1 inch mark right here and add the armhole. The armhole is 9. So I'll put a dot right here for 9. Now where the armhole is, the armhole dot, you'll put the ruler there so that you can go across. So the next measurement will be the bust. The bust is 43. 43 divided by 4 is 10.75. So 10.75 is what we will put down for the measurement. This is 10.75 right here. This is 25 a half, 0.75, 0.25, 0.50, 0.75. There are a lot of rulers, ruler diagrams on Google that you can look up, because you will need to know how to read a ruler in order to do these measurements. So 10.75. And also, a lot of times when I do mine, I include the 1/2 inch seam allowance. So the original measurement is 10.75. I will usually add 1/2 inch and it will be 11.25. But because I'm just showing how to put the measurements on the fabric, I will pretty much just add it after I put all the measurements down. So okay, I put down the armhole. This right here, this dot, I usually go maybe, I would say, I'm going to use the tape measure. So I usually go a 1/2 inch up in a diagonal, and I go from this top, and I'm drawing in a line. You want to draw in a line from here to this dot that I just put down and go here. So basically I did this, and that will form the armhole. Okay, so this is what the armhole looks like. This is the back, the front, shoulder, armhole. Sorry if I keep going in and out. Like I said, it's kind of hard to record and hold the measuring tape and the ruler with one hand and try to mark and everything with the other hand. Okay, so the next measurement is the waist measurement. So what I do to put down the waist measurement, here's the bust. This measurement next to the bust measurement is the under bust. The measurement that we took in the previous video showing how to get the under bust, you go from the top of the shoulder right under the bust, but I don't go right underneath the bust, I go an inch under. So this is the measurement that we will use to document the waist. So the measurement was 15.5, but I will add an inch. I will add an inch more because this garment will be getting elastic. So I add an inch more because you don't want it to be right underneath you. So we will put the waist measurement. So this is how it's looking so far. The waist measurement is 37. 37 divided by 4, 9.25. So we're going to mark. I am going to mark, I will usually mark 9.25, but because this is getting elastic, I am going to add, I'm going to say not a half. I'm going to just take it to 10 instead of 9.25 because you don't want, the waist is already going to be constricted if you do it exactly at 9.25. So I'm going to do it at 10. So then I take it down. Okay, right there. So right here, this is a little trick that I do. Usually from this mark, since you don't want it to, basically the garment is an A-line. So you don't really want the flare to go out directly, you know, at your bust. So I'll add 2 inches from the waist mark, basically, which is the under bust mark. So I'll add 2 inches from the under bust mark because the waist is kind of like 2 inches or so from the under bust to the waist is like 2 inches. Maybe 2 or 3, give or take, but 2 inches is fine because you don't want to go exactly on the waist and then have it, it's going to look kind of weird if you have the flare starting exactly right there. So I usually go down 2 inches. And I'll take it down again. Okay. So from this mark, right here, let me get my handy dandy weight to hold this down. I like to go down because if you just basically cut the garment out going straight across, the sides will drag and the front will, the front will be fine, but the sides will be longer. So you have to kind of do it on a curve. So from the waistline, the mark right there to this line is 39.25. So I take that same mark I take the measuring tape, and it was 39.25, and I go all the way over. So you see how the measuring tape is? It looks like it's going in a curve all the way over. And I mark down 39.25. And then I mark down 39.25 right here. Then I move the measuring tape over and mark 39.25 again. And then I move the measuring tape over and I mark 39.25 again. So then I connect the dots. It will go like this and ease into the original line. This way, the garment has a nice little flow going on to it. This is how I do my wide. This is how I basically do my A-lines anyway. And it has a nice little flow. So you see how it feeds in, you know, you ease it in to that line. Okay. So now you basically take your ruler and you put it towards that line, and then you basically just use the ruler to mark the line. You're just using the ruler as a guide. You're just using a ruler as a guide. See? I'm going to make the line a little bit darker so that you guys can see it. But that's basically how I put the measurements on a garment. I'm sorry, on a fabric. We're making a garment, silly me. Also, when I'm cutting it out, I'm going to show you how to cut it out, matter of fact. So this garment is getting pockets. So usually I will add the pockets in the fabric. It's a little bit easier that way. So I go down, depending on the size. This is a large. Those measurements were for a large. So I go down from the armhole, from the top of the armhole, and for the large I usually go to 8. And I make a mark. Then I put my ruler on here, on the line. I usually like my pockets to be maybe 9 inches. So from this line to this line is 9 inches. And I draw the pockets. So I basically went like this and drew the pocket. I'm going to darken the line up. See, when I'm working here, smudging my hands a little teeny piece, but the other colors wouldn't show up on this fabric, so I had to do what I had to do. So that is the pocket. Okay. And you don't want to have the pockets that just go straight out. You don't want them to go straight out, because then the pocket won't stay down, and then that's when you have the rabbit ears, which I really hate. So now we're going. So here are the pockets. They're all stitched together. So I don't leave them like this, because if I do, when someone sticks their hand in the pockets, the pocket won't stay in, and that's pretty annoying. So usually what I do is I draw a line from here all the way down to here. Okay, so it's a line from here to here, and then I make markings. I go down 2 inches, and then from the same mark I'll go down 7, and in between is where the pocket will be open. I will stitch from here, from the straight line to here, and then from this line to here, and all that will be open is in between, which is about 5 inches, and that way you can stick your hand in the pocket won't flip inside out. Okay, so this is what the garment looks like from this angle, as you can see, in A-line. So because, as I said, if you cut right here, then the whole neck hole will be a big circle, and you don't want that. So usually I start right here, but you always want to go up like a 1/2 inch, because that's the seam allowance. So I go up 1/2 inch, even a 1/2 inch away from the 4 inches that I went over for the neck. So this would be like 3.5. See? Then this is why I usually put the line, so that I can have space to cut over top of the shoulder. It doesn't have to necessarily be perfect, because you should be serging your garments when you sew. You can just serge it by itself. You don't necessarily have to sew. Serging is a really good form of holding it together. If you go in the stores and you look at t-shirts, anything that's knit, you will see that it's just serged. You will not see a regular stitch or a zigzag stitch on the inside, usually, unless it's like swimwear or something. But garments shouldn't fit so tight, whereas though if you're just serging, it's going to fall apart or break apart. I mean, if it breaks apart, then that means it's too small for you. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to go over some more so I have some space. I'm doing the same thing for this. Going over maybe like a 1/2 inch. And I'm using this for the seam allowance. Okay, there we go. Now here we are coming to the pocket. So you want seam allowance on the pocket as well. And it sounds so thick because this is actually 2 garments. I laid 2 different fabrics on top of each other. It just makes it easier. But I wouldn't recommend this if you are just starting out, because you can mess up someone's garment, and that is not going to be nice. Okay, so I'm going to pivot like this and continue to go down. Now we're at the curve. You don't have to add seam allowance to this, because we already added the inch originally. So We're going to cut right on this line. There we go. I'm just going to clip the rest of this off. And voila. There is an A-line. Now, this is for the front neck. This is only one layer. This is the front. Only one layer. You don't do two, not two. You do just the one. And you meet up. Meet up with the top. Don't go past it. See, I met up with this one that's already cut. So this will be the back and this will be the front. Okay. Thank you for taking the time out to watch. And I hope this is scrap, so don't mind that. I hope that I taught you a little bit of something. If you have questions, comment below in the comment section. And I will respond back to you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for watching.